Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a conversation about a Linux project. It could be a distribution, desktop environment, application. We also chat about any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion, or the big saloon bar. What is that called? Is it just called a bar? Do we know? I should know. I was a bartender for a time. The speakeasy, yeah, the Linux speakeasy. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project, and with me today, I've got a fantastic panel of people. What? Am I too loud? Were you telling me I gotta be quiet, Colin?
The almost obsession.
Oh, almost.
I do that every week. You obviously don't see it.
I do not have an unhealthy obsession with anything.
That's the first time you've seen me do that.
No, I haven't seen that. I'm gonna leave it like here now, just because. Oh, this is the older one. This is before the slight rebrand.
Thank you for telling me that. We needed to know.
I'm sure it was important. Anyway, as the speakeasy doors swing open, with me today I've got Eris, Ben, Colin, Jinda, Adam Grubbs, Dale, who calls himself low-tech Linux, but I think I would call him high-tech Linux. Sean and Shickle just marched on through.
Go.
How is everybody?
Excellent.
Yep, good.
Well, fantastic.
Having a butt-kicking day.
A butt-kicking day.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have two legs, because if you only had one leg, it'd be a very busy day.
Oh, good grief. We're not trying to reference Liar Liar here, are we?
I don't know.
Good grief.
So be sure to do that straw poll. How has Linux been in 2024? If you could knock that out, add to that if you have not yet voted. Would certainly appreciate that. Because on the dock for today, it's an open mic night. And the last one of the year. So we're going to talk about any number of topics there. We'll talk about that straw poll. But first, what I'm doing in Linux and tech. Now, Ben, you gave some very exciting news about yourself before the show, and I thought it'd be fun for you to share. What is that exciting news, Ben?
I finished college, boys.
No, you didn't.
I did.
Oh, wow. Congratulations, buddy.
Well done,
Yep.
You finished college, but not learning.
Well, you're never truly done learning stuff, but I got to tell you guys, this class, Cybersecurity Fundamentals, was a pain in the butt. Even my mom, who was so gracious to take me through the class, and my sister, Michaela, oh, what a saint. But, I got to tell you, if it wasn't for them, probably would have failed. But, either way, it was a labor of love, and I got through it, and I am just so glad to be done with this stuff. So, either way, I also applied for graduation, so that's a good thing. And also, I'm waiting on my certs to come in the mail, and so very, very exciting. And now I'm basically just waiting on my dad to help me get some kind of job going, because he's reaching out to a couple of folks about that, and we'll just see where it goes. So,
well, it's fantastic news.
Yeah, and I'm also going for something in tech support, and yeah, we're very, very exciting. And hopefully sometime tonight in the show, we'll be talking about more of my Linux projects, and we'll just see where things end up. So.
Excellent. Yeah, because you teased on a little bit of excitement with the whole StormOS thing, so we'll get to that.
Yes.
After a little while.
There's a lot of updates that I have to share with the group. So.
Cool. We'll be sure to get to that.
All right.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on your advancement in your knowledge, your breadth of knowledge. I'm wishing you the absolute best for your future career and whatever it is that you end up doing. So
Thank you.
certainly. So our last straw poll of the year. In your opinion, how has 2024 been? 2024. Did I say that right? For Linux. I don't know, Eris, if you wanted to go through that. I got some stuff that came off the r/Reddit, which was that's a place right there.
So, you want me to go through already?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let me see. I did have some responses. The replies that I got was I voted good, even though I still have my reservations. The trend is positive. And then somebody else said, anti-cheat knocked me down from great to good for me, but everything else has been really good. And finally, somebody wrote, I voted great because there has been some really, in my view, outstanding improvements. For one thing, Fedora 40 and 41 both came out, and then their KDE releases only had Wayland, and are able to stand on their own as highly useful installations. KDE Plasma itself, now at version 6.0, displayed a number of visual improvements and actually took me from a KDE Plasma hater, so to speak, to a legitimate fan. Overall, I think the releases as we encountered them in 2024 continue the now long-standing trend of being best so far, highly polished, and as an operating system itself, notwithstanding specific software titles, it's at least as ready as Windows for use by the general public. And as far as the results, number one answer was great with 54%, followed by good with 33%. Okay comes in third with 6%. Tux Penguin has 3.5%. Terrible has 2%. Other has 1.39%. And bad did not get any votes.
Sounds right.
Yeah, bad got one vote on
Oh,
mine,
did it?
according to me.
This is our highest participation poll that we've had, so that's fun. Yeah, there's so I decided, I don't know if it was a good idea or not, but I thought it was a very benign topic. I thought, and so I threw out an r/Linux. I haven't thrown anything there before, and boy, there are some really non-Linuxy answers that came through that, but I think there's some good stuff. So one from I don't know what it is. I can't. Interesting username. He says it feels like everything has gotten better. More hardware supported in the Linux in the kernel. Linux dealing better with Zen 5 and Lunar Lake CPU architectures than Windows. KDE6. I think he meant Plasma. Going live pretty smoothly. Wayland becoming mainstream more or less seamlessly, for me anyway. Linux getting more popular on Steam. What feels like an uptick in interest due to Windows 11 recall shenanigans and so on. And then I think there are major regressions in more games, adding Linux hostile anti-cheat, and uptick in some other things that I don't want to get into on this show. So people like complain about the API changes and whatnot. Bunch of just garbage. But someone else said, as Darth Casium says, it's been much better than before. There's been so many more improvements in 2024 compared to before. And the improvements specifically in Wayland, KDE, have meant that I now have much more consistent and better performance. I constantly get much more consistent and much better performance when playing modded Minecraft natively on Wayland than on X11, and has made it more enjoyable for me to play the game, actually. The new features we as a community got from all this, like improved fractional scaling and proper support for HDR, color profiles, VRR, I don't know what that is, explicit sync, etc. Also made this a great year. I only benefit from some of those things, but it definitely made the Linux experience as a whole much better for everyone. And someone said I switched full-time on Linux on 3 desktop machines. So far, so good. And there's a lot more. If you want to check it out, go there carefully, but r/Linux, it's a place. So, Eric, welcome. And Schickel, haven't seen that face in a long time. I don't know.
Long time no see.
Yeah. Mr. Lurker. Sean is here. I don't know. What would you say, your opinion? How do you feel Linux has changed in 2024?
Oh Lord, that's a tough dang question.
I said great. I
Yeah.
said it was a great year. And I think that post you just read covered a bunch of it. I just feel like, Wayland is finally getting some real traction. It's less of a controversial thing, it feels like. Like maybe there's just some acceptance. Like this has just got to be the future because X is just sort of not going to be a thing forever. And I've had pretty good luck with it myself. So even on traditionally difficult systems like hybrid NVIDIA, systems, and I actually prefer Wayland at this point. Excuse me, a lot for touchpad support, stuff like that, gestures, things like that. I feel like every year I see this get more and more polished, both from a desktop environment and then also from, the distros themselves. I think the immutable or, what are they calling it now? I can't remember what the term du jour is, but the composable, there we go, composable systems. I think that's pretty exciting. It's not quite there for me yet for a day-to-day sort of thing, but I could see using it in certain circumstances. And I could also see the promise, and I can definitely see that within not very long, I think it'll be in a place where I'm happy to use it, and I think really that will make a big difference in terms of like just having that AV, and have an image-based system where it's basically foolproof from that standpoint, and just that sense that you have that really robust, I guess, system underneath is nice. So less chance for people to mess it up, I guess. And also I just don't tinker like I used to. So for me, it just makes sense to have a system that's just sort of, what you'd use it as it comes and then, tweak it just a little bit. But yeah, so I think those three things for me specifically have been really, really good. So
What would you say is the feature that says it's not ready? Like, is there something specific in your mind, or is it just something more
if
ambiguous?
the answer to how do I run a native package is DistroBox, which it currently is, DistroBox doesn't quite handle some native packages perfectly. Things like launchers. So if I use like ULauncher and I install it through an image on DistroBox, it wants to launch those, the images in there, or the applications from that image. I don't know if there's a way to repoint it so that it looks at the host system or if that's even possible. Same thing with like Gwake terminal. That's something I use as a drop down.
Mm-hmm.
Same exact thing. Like if you install it on DistroBox, it wants to run from that system, from inside that container and not the host system, which isn't the way I need to use it. So stuff like that where you have to sort of lay packages over. And, the answer is you can install native packages as part of the image. And it's not impossible, but it's definitely, a little extra work. And I guess what I figured out is I use more native packages than I thought I did, because I do use a lot of Flatpaks. And so because they rely on Flatpak, I thought, oh, well, this would be a good fit for me. And it is 90% of the time. It's just that last sort of 10% that is, there's enough friction there for me that it's just not quite where it needs to be. And also the distros I've been using are fairly opinionated in terms of what they include in their base image. And that's going to be a big part of it. I think you'll see differentiation in composable distros where they either have different images for different approaches or applications for using a system, maybe for like, a business terminal versus a home computer versus, different things. So, and what's included in the image will be different based on that use case. And so for right now, there's just some things that are still in the works, which is what you exactly expect to see. They're getting a lot of feedback from it. They're, taking that, and every successive change they make is an improvement, and I see them very rapidly approaching, the point where it's just usable for most people.
So do
I
you
think.
go ahead, Critical?
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I think it's a good thing that you brought up that the whole layering thing. There is a way to point things like to DistroBox. So there's like a way to basically, like if you create an application launcher or something like that, you can point it to DistroBox to run it like that way. But my approach has been, because I'm a Silverblue user, barely, is that I've kind of had to accept that like what I would consider a system component, so like a terminal like Quake or something like that, you just can't get around layering it. Like it just has to be done. And it's a little bit of a point of frustration, because it works, but
Yeah.
every change you make, you have to reboot for. So it
Yeah.
can be a little bit of a headache especially if you forget something. It's like, oh, I got to do it again. So.
Yeah, and I wonder too about the base itself. The way they are pulling in the packages and basing it on a specific release, and then if that sort of pushes forward, I don't know if that layering is going to be a long-term solution. And so I guess I just have to assume at some point DistroBox or tools like that are going to be able to be more sort of, able to do those kinds of things. They're probably already working on it for all I know, or there's already a solution and I'm just not aware of it. So. But it's very cool technology, and Silverblue's, yeah, excellent. And then all the derivatives kind of off of Silverblue at this point.
Do you think that with ARM becoming a true competitor to the x86 line, and the fact that there's no ARM is not homogeneous, so Snapdragon will be different than Raspberry Pi, different than Pine 64, different than, so you have to have different builds unique to those architectures. Do you think something like an immutable distribution is probably the way we're going to be delivering in the future to some of these ARM or maybe RISC-V type platforms? Like that's actually how they're going to build them in the future?
I don't see why they wouldn't, depending on the popularity, but I think you'd run into the same situation that you run into creating native packages, which is you have to compile them, whether you're including it in an image or you're, including them as individual packages with dependencies and things like that. So, and again, I think that's a popularity contest, depending on the number of systems that exist and the demand for it. You probably will have better luck, which has always sort of been the case with Linux, right? I mean, if you use some sort of third-party way out there, independent hardware manufacturer, you're probably going to not have as good an experience as if you have a Lenovo or a Dell or something there's millions of them out there, and likely that someone's already got it working. So I would think ARM's going to be the same way. I've thought the same thing. Like it's definitely not homogeneous, and making that decision to use one architecture, a variation of the architecture over another. I mean, at this point, I would say it's the safe bet. It would be to go after those Snapdragon systems, because I assume with the Windows Copilot PCs, there's going to be a lot of them out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are they even selling Windows PCs without the Copilot stuff? I guess they'll still sell some Intel and AMD stuff for a while, but I don't know. Do you guys think that? Do you think that
just
they're
bought a laptop, like a brand new one, and maybe I might be a version behind without realizing it. But it doesn't have the like Copilot logo or anything on the keyboard. So I don't know if it's a thing that Microsoft is forcing, or if it's a thing that like they're strongly encouraging and brands can opt out. But I've only seen like 2 or 3 at Best Buy that don't have it. So it almost feels like it's mandatory.
Well, I think that might be true for the home market, but obviously, Windows is going to have to support x86 forever, just by the nature of their business model.
Well, they support Copilot stuff on AMD and Intel as well, not just Qualcomm.
But without that,
Neural engine.
yeah.
Oh, they
without
have
that-
their own now.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah. The Intel, I think they call them Lunar Lake, the 200
Oh, yeah,
series
you're
and
right.
the AMD. They specifically put the letters AI in it. The Ryzen AI HX, whatever the hell's. They yeah, they support it.
Hooray. Yeah.
Oh, you can't get away from it. Just accept that it's there.
Welcome your new
Remember
AI
the
overlords.
remember the Athlon XP? This is the new version of that.
So I kind of, and maybe I'm missing something here because it could be possible. But it seems like the NPUs, at least from that Intel is including on their chips, it seems as far as like its overall like design architecture is not very dissimilar to what a GPU core is, but just specialized more for the workloads that you'd see from an AI a language model parsing whatever thing. So it doesn't seem
Yeah,
like it's
it's
that
just a
different.
chip that does SIMD operations, single input multi data and stuff. That's all they all are. So they're SIMD chips that are very good at matrix math. Like that's a lot of what AI stuff is. So
Yeah. So I know like AI is kind of the buzzword, but to me it just seems like it's kind of a marketing wankery, as it were. It's not really. It's just a different computational unit. I mean, we've been adding different instruction sets on these architectures for decades now. This is
I
just
guess
yet
it depends on
another.
how reductionist you want to be about it, right?
Yeah,
How
I suppose.
everything ends up being, some kind of binary machine at the end of the day. Do you really want to take it down to that? Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to be like condescending toward it or anything like that. I'm just saying
No,
like, to
no,
me
it's just yeah. I
to me
get it. Like
I,
the marketing terms are silly, but they're also useful, I think. 'Cause,
I'm
Yeah, I
sure.
think
it's like calling a retina screen, right? Like you say retina and it's like a marketing term, but it immediately tells you it's a high DPI screen without having to explain what high DPI means.
Right.
right. Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
that
if you
oops.
do have a use case for large language model, if you're using it for something, it would be nice to be able to do it locally instead of having to go out to the cloud for it or to a third party and have to pay for it. There's a lot of great open source projects that right now require a pretty hefty video card to do that. And if we can transition more towards machines that have the NPUs, I would like to have one at some point. I think it would be nice. Go ahead, Chickle. Sorry about that.
Oh no, you're good. I think a challenge in terms of the general understanding of the whole AI thing is because like for the most part, a lot of these features are like just really specific ML things. Like AI is all just machine learning stuff. Um, but in terms of things like ChatGPT, Gemini, I'm sure there's others. I think the AI term really works for those because the way that they present themselves is almost like you're interfacing with another. I don't want to say being because it gives it a little too much, but you're having kind of like a conversation with something of intelligence. But then there's also like AI features that like it will like erase something in a photo or a video. And that's where I think it gets wishy-washy with how we like define AI like in the general market. Because at some point then AI just means any feature that references like some kind of like large machine learning database. Um, so it's a little challenging.
But I mean, you could look at it the same way as you look at a graphics card, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you can use graphics card for playing video games, obviously, but then for encoding video and audio and yeah, so
Bitcoin.
right, mining Bitcoin, right. So there are other uses for that, and that's what I'm curious to see as well is like, will an NPU be useful for anything else besides AI stuff? Maybe. I don't know. It's
I
just
believe it will
one
be.
of the more yeah, yeah. It kind of feels like something that specialized and that powerful for that sort of specific thing. To Adam's point about being reductionist, like there's probably something else, just like we've seen with video cards, where they can do these other things very well. Maybe these NPUs do the same thing.
So I can give you an example of how a GPU differs from the NPU stuff. So the new PlayStation 5 Pro, a wonderful guy who, architected it, Mark Cerny, did a whole presentation on it. It was awesome. But in that, he talks about how
they developed some custom hardware for the PS5 Pro that has the equivalent of about 300 tops of performance. That's integer, 8-bit point, operations per second, right? 300 trillion operations per second in a console. Now, if you compare what a GPU would do, that would require like a 3090 to get that number. And so a smaller custom chip in a console, because it's specifically made to do that, has significantly higher performance than an equivalent GPU would doing the same operation. You would need a honking GPU on GPU cores to do that. But because it's a specialized piece of hardware that specifically does that, it's able to be way faster, right?
It's not dissimilar to how like hardware encoding on chips work. Like you have like specific pieces of hardware that accelerate things like HEVC and ABC and all that. So like it makes a lot of sense that way.
Yeah.
I think ARM's just interesting in general, simply because of all of the advantages of, being, generating less heat, using less electricity, you see a better battery life, and you don't need fans, or you don't need many fans. That those are all, and the compute power is actually, comparable, at least in most ways that I'm aware of, to an x86 chip. So I think that's fun to see it finally go mainstream, knowing that this has actually been available as a technology for a while, and it just, I guess, never had enough push or interest behind it. I mean, Windows on ARM's been around for a while, so, but it's always been pretty terrible, at least from what I've heard. I've never actually run it on ARM, but I've had a few ARM things, but yeah, they were not impressive, simply because they're being built as, mobile chips. Power consumption was sort of the main focus instead of power itself. So having a capable system, like, I'm looking forward to that trickle down where, they've been out long enough, again, like we've said, with, well supported, being able to just pick one up secondhand a couple years from now and have things run well. I think that'll be interesting.
So, yes, Shickle, please.
I don't want to derail this too much, but this kind of like ties in with a very recent experience of mine regarding ARM and Linux. In terms of, I think it's been a great year for Linux, but I've only been here for like 2 weeks, so I'm coming in a little late, but I'm still on the board, I swear. I installed Asahi Fedora Remix on my M1 Mac that I've had since 2020 when it first launched. I'm surprised that it just works as well as it does, considering it is an ARM chip, and this generally, it's generalized software targeted at the platform, but not specifically for that chip. Wayland is working perfectly in Plasma on Apple Silicon. It has GPU acceleration, so like when I watch like 8K videos in YouTube just as a test, my CPU like usage just barely moves at all. And then on top of that, like Pipewire is working, Bluetooth is working, everything, and like that's not even just like an ARM chip, that's like an Apple ARM chip, which is like even more crazy. And to put this into perspective, so Apple dropped like OpenGL, is that the one? Asahi supports like fully on that GPU the latest like OpenGL like standard thing like that. Apple doesn't even support that. So like running any OpenGL programs on it, like I play a lot of Minecraft, that stuff works really well. It's remarkable. I get better performance out of that than native Mac OS. I don't understand. It's remarkable.
That is remarkable. So, I guess from the NPU perspective, or whatever, the AI module series of cores, it's essentially an ASIC for a specialized component for a specific task. Would that be correct? Like
I think
a
effectively, yeah.
application specific integrated circuit, I think is what it stands for.
Yeah.
So anyway, I that's kind of how I look at it, and I don't know. I guess maybe I should be more excited.
I think I'm excited, but like maybe for the wrong reasons. Like the ups and downs of the whole AI thing are what they are. But in terms of like the technical aspect of like I can have like 800 cores on my like CPU technically, and like they're not like normal cores, but just the fact that they're all like specific processing units for like running a thing in parallel, it's just impressive to me, and I want to mess with it and break stuff. And I don't know how yet, but like I want to.
Oh, I have
So just
I
for the
have
sake of
confidence in you.
having them,
I have faith that you will figure it out, Chico.
I'll-
You have
I'll find a
always had
way.
that skill.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you can figure out how to break it. So I guess this is from like another like almost more of a theoretical perspective, but the AI cores on ARM chips versus on x86 based, are they going to be technically similar then?
they could actually, you could technically have the exact same NPU on like two different architectures in the same way that you could plug an NVIDIA GPU into an
Right.
ARM board if it
that's what I
supports
figured.
it, which is kind of wild. It feels wrong, but
So, okay, I think that's interesting, and that'll take. If I go down that rabbit hole, it's totally. That's going like light years away from where I think we should go. But anyway, I think it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see what kind of Linux support all these new ASICs that will probably be showing up on chips are going to be.
there is something that I think it could be very useful for if we could somehow get hardware acceleration and all that support worked in somehow through the kernel or patches. But like applications that do things like enhancing like video, or like that try to like remove things from video. Like I'm going to use watermarks as an example, even though generally I don't recommend doing that because that's a lot of effort. But I think if you had the stuff there to do it, like the software support to actually interface with it, I think that could accelerate those types of tasks, and take some of the load off of your GPU and CPU, and let those focus on other things like rendering and, handling encode and decode.
Actually,
well-
when you mentioned that, in OBS 31, the newest release, I believe they allow access to the RTX SDK stuff in Linux to remove like backgrounds and audio suppression, that kind of thing,
Wow.
using the tensor stuff on the RTX GPUs.
Wow.
That's cool.
It's very cool.
It's really funny how they got that working before, proper browser or video decoding, but that's okay.
Priority of effort.
I'm like 90% willing to bet that it's just like somebody was excited enough to just dedicate all of their time to it. Like like they were just like, this is what I'm gonna
Right.
focus on right now.
Yeah.
So, to move this along in the open mic night, I have a couple different topics here I wanted to sort of get to, and one was over the course of 2024, have any of you changed your daily driver Linux operating system? Or, I mean, if you've changed away from Linux, that's fine too, or changed to whatever. Has anybody shifted completely from beginning of the year to now? I'll go ahead and start and just tell you no. But
I'm
I'm
very
cur-
surprised to hear that. Yes.
Oh man,
I'm very curious to know if anybody here has made any major changes. I see, Shickle, you look like you're just jumping out of your seat or something to share what's been going on since we haven't heard from you. So
Yeah. The timing is just funny. I may have distro hopped like 30 times yesterday.
wow,
Um, I have like it's been a couple years, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of new stuff, and I'm pretty sure my flash drive's just about dead. Uh, I just don't know where to start. So like I installed the Fedora Asahi thing on my Mac,
Hmm.
and then I was like so excited by it because it was just working so well that I was like, I need a laptop. I need to do this. Like I need to get one anyway, but like this is gonna be like the thing that motivates me. Um, so currently I'm on Fedora Silverblue, which is where I left off the last time I was here. I've been like a GNOME person kind of for a while. But after using Plasma on Fedora Asahi, I kind of really like it a lot. And I know I'm like, like burning the paychecks that I was secretly getting from Red Hat, but I really like it. It's so good, and I think I'm probably gonna lean more in that direction. I would like to see what happens with the um, KDE OS, the Banana OS. But that kind of direction is my target. So I'm sitting comfortably on Silverblue until then, but from Mac OS to Silverblue.
Now, using Silverblue as in the GNOME version or the Kino White or whatever. Have you tried the
Yeah,
Kino White?
I am using the GNOME version currently, but I've switched back and forth from Silverblue to Kino White like 5 times yesterday because
5.
yeah, it's really good. There's just like one thing that I'm like I can't get sorted out, and it's just like an issue that I'm having with Discover, where like if I search for Firefox, it shows up for a second and then suddenly like 400 other results for like themes and like add-ons and extensions and stuff like that also show up, and I have to like scroll to find the actual application. I just don't know how Fedora has packaged that to turn it off.
Hmm.
But outside of that, it's like basically perfect. I use the GUI Software Center a lot, so it's like a bit of a struggle for me.
Yeah, you bring that up, and I would say the biggest change between beginning of the year to now is I love living in the terminal, but I have to say the graphical packaging systems like the Discover has been so good for me that like I found update my flat packs and RPMs and the
It's just
the
one
the
button.
firmware. Yeah, it's one button, and then I don't have to think about it
So good.
anymore. And I've checked its work, and it's doing things correctly. So I mean, that'd be probably my biggest change. What about you, Eric? Have you any changes from now? Because you said you don't tinker as much now, so that obviously has an effect probably on choices.
Yeah, it's less about changing distros as it is having a different piece of hardware, which led me to try a bunch of different distros. So I know I've talked about that Latitude tablet like ad nauseum at this point, but in case people weren't
I don't
aware,
mind.
I bought a Dell Latitude tablet, 8th gen Intel, really nice, i5 system and i5 i7. I can't remember. Anyway, it's just a really nice system and it's a tablet. So I've been able to take it with me and it's just ultra portable compared to even like a lightweight laptop. And I've just really just had a great time using it all around. Mostly, I thought I was getting it to the experiment was, can I run Linux as a tablet operating system? Because I was tired of using my Samsung tablet. And the truth is that yes, you can, but even GNOME, which is, I would say, head and shoulders above the other desktops in terms of touchscreen support, with like an on-screen keyboard that actually shows up whenever you need it and gets out of your way, and sort of the same sort of functionality baseline that you would expect from an Android tablet, except that it's still very rudimentary. So yes, it works, and yes, you can use it, but just things like the keyboard itself, while it's functional, is also extremely basic and just doesn't have anything like you'd expect with, autocomplete and just different. I guess I'm I'm just so used to, something like Gboard or a keyboard like that not even having like swipe gesture. Like it's just again a very rudimentary experience. So the answer is yes, you can use it as a tablet. The battery life is certainly not as good because it's an Intel chip. needs, to whenever it's decoding video from, if you're trying to use it like a tablet, so a lot of media consumption, stuff like that, kills the battery pretty quickly. And admittedly, it's not a perfect battery. It's only at about 60% health, but still, it's nothing like having the Android tablet. The Samsung will last, I could sit there and watch probably 5 movies in a row before it, needs to be charged. So that experiment proved that it works, but again, was very limited and probably not the most ideal. So I ended up using my tablet for media stuff, and then the Latitude for if I am either not at my desk or traveling. And so for that purpose, then I've tried a lot of different operating systems or distros and things like that. I left Windows on it and has Windows 11 just as a comparison to see. And just sort of as a disclaimer, like Windows on a tablet device is actually pretty good. Definitely from like a keyboard and touch, they've got sort of all that figured out. You can even use the pen support is excellent. That was another thing under Linux that's kind of, they have Wacom support, but it's just not as good. So yeah, so I used a lot of different distros and sort of settled on Pop OS because it's GNOME, but then it has all of the other things baked into it. And but I went through a lot of different ones to get to that point and test it, and did the immutable and did all these different ones. And so that was sort of my reason to try a lot of different distros, because I haven't been I have Pop on my laptop as well, which shows you how boring I am to have it on both my systems, but hey, it works for me at least. So yeah, still like GNOME. I like how Pop does GNOME. And so been testing Cosmic. I think Cosmic's probably the most interesting thing I've seen this year in terms of, a new development in distros besides the immutable composable stuff that we talked about earlier. And I actually just updated my virtual machine copy of Cosmic right before this just to see. And one of the things that had been really bothering me was the Alt Tab didn't go in recent use order. So, if you like Alt Tab between, you expect to go back to the last used application. In their case, they were doing it alphabetically. It was really dumb and frustrating because it's like every operating system or every desktop I've ever used uses Alt Tab, and you go to the most recent window. It's fixed now. So it's like, oh, I could actually probably use this day to day. I noticed in their app store, there's actually apps that are specific for Cosmic now. Not a lot. There's only a few, and there's just like they're real basic, like a weather app and stuff like that. But it shows that some, people are interested. And I think I've seen enough chat online that people actually, it seems to be pretty positive. People seem to be interested in it and are giving it a fair chance without, immediately dismissing it. But yeah, beyond that, no, I'm boring. I like GNOME, and like I said, Pop's the best GNOME for me. So
Yeah, I also been experimenting with, except with Plasma touchscreen interface. Like using I got this like really old and slow. It was terrible with Windows 8 or 10 or whatever was on there before, and it's only slightly better with Plasma. Like, I mean, we're talking fractions of a fraction better. But anyway, my only hang-up has been right-click. Like, on-screen keyboard, that's great. The way it does everything, it's great. But right-click, that's been the only thing that's been a pain in the backside. Outside of that, everything it actually works really well.
Is that the physical button you're talking about, or?
Yeah, so like if I want to do like a right click, for menu, context menu, or like copy paste or any of those features, on an Android, I just you just hold your finger down for a while. I can't say for iPhones because I don't have one. Although I do have an iPad, but anyway, so you just hold down and then it pops up and then you do whatever you want to do. So to do that in desktop Linux, that if you hold down in Plasma, it doesn't do anything. So I did find something called Touch Egg, I guess. It isn't.
Yeah, Touch Egg's been around for a long time.
Yeah, but I only just learned about it today. So but I haven't played with it yet.
Oh.
And I don't know how well it does, but I guess it uses 2-finger to do right click which that'd be fine too. Actually, I'd probably prefer that than hold my finger and wait for the operating system to decide I want something else. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll give that a try. I do know that I do agree. Eric, you were saying that Windows does a pretty good job with touchscreen. I mean, I would say the iPad does it better. Not
For me, I like the GNOME desktop. I reckon they do a great job on touchpads, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe I should try GNOME. But I mean, this thing is performance-wise, it's just so.
Does the keyboard come up though? Because that was a problem I had in Plasma, and that might have been Plasma 5 instead of 6. But it seemed that I had a hard time getting the keyboard to come up without like manually activating it from the tray.
Yeah, so it does. So there's a key on Plasma 6. They actually have a on-screen keyboard setting, and you can install whatever keyboard you would like. Unfortunately, it doesn't have one set up by default, so you do have to go in and add one. But once you add one, I got one that I really like that I think is pretty tip-top. So
I remember that now. Yeah,
but
okay.
It's just in the settings. You just have to add it, and then it works. But it pops up like you want to. You don't have to do anything silly. If there's a field that would require text input, the operating system knows you're doing text input, so it'll pop it up, and that does truly work really well. And
is it consistent across everything? Because I've seen sometimes where certain things it won't, and like you had to like very specifically say, okay. I guess my experience was I found it to be flaky, and then whenever I tried GNOME, like GNOME is pretty like I can't think of any instances where it didn't know that it was supposed to pop up a keyboard. Anyway,
so I don't recall.
Matter.
I don't recall being annoyed by that. It maybe I was so annoyed by the lack of right click I didn't notice anything else.
That's a pretty sound strategy. If you're a developer, you kind of say, well, if I annoy them enough
over here, they won't notice.
That's right.
They won't look for anything else.
I'm just trying to think actually, because I had on this what's it called again? This Windows
Surface
tablet. The Surface Go. I did have Plasma on there, and then I put GNOME on there, and I can't remember. From memory, I think Plasma worked pretty well on the touchscreen as well, from memory. But then I put GNOME on there. So, but I think I've always used two-finger tap without installing Touch Egg or anything. I always thought two-finger tap worked, but I think maybe only in the file manager. Maybe can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know it existed until just a few moments ago.
Right.
Here's a fun thing on that as well. If you're using X11, sometimes it will work. But things like Touch Egg, sometimes they're pre-installed. It depends on the distribution as well. I've seen Touch Egg just already included in some instances, but if you're on Wayland, it's more likely to work consistently. But if you're on X, it's a little flakier because not everything will communicate the same way. It's just really annoying, but we're getting there. It's way better than it's ever been, but it's little paper cuts here and there.
Can I just take a moment? Because I'm being really triggered by people saying touch egg, because I always thought it was touche egg.
I think it is, but I always feel weird saying it.
Because it's got the little accent.
Yeah.
It does, but it sounds...
Touche egg.
Yeah, that sounds really strange.
It sounds like we can't say that on air.
I'm going to say it. Touche egg.
Touche egg.
Be like the knights who say knee. Oh, you said it again.
I was thinking how it's spelled
say oui, oui.
on GitHub, and they didn't have a little accent thing on Toucheg. I mean, or yeah. Anyway, I'll just let that lie because I was going to say something else that might have sounded worse. So let's let that one go. But it looks like the last update was over a year ago, so I'm not sure what that means.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. Feature complete. Okay. We'll go with that. Anybody else here have they changed things as far as like your main? I know Jinda, I think you're still using MX from beginning to end.
I've been using MX for a very long time.
Yeah, it's a good choice. I know
I
Adam's
don't really And since there's distro packs, I don't think there's a bad choice anymore.
That's a good point.
I technically changed, but I didn't change. I was having problems on my main computer when I was living with the sister-in-law with Wi-Fi, and I thought it was a plasma issue. So I spun up another Arch Linux distro with Cinnamon and reinstalled that on my main system. So still the same base, just a different desktop, but it didn't solve my problems anyway.
Well, at least you found out what didn't solve your problems.
Yeah, it was. She changed her Wi. She changed her internet to Wi-Fi. It was actually not. It wasn't wired to the house. It was just Wi-Fi internet, and it was just driving me nuts that I couldn't get onto certain sites. I was using my phone. I was tethering from my phone for most of the time I lived there for about 3-4 months because I just couldn't get onto websites and stuff. So it was driving me crazy.
This is totally an aside, but because I've been more of a digital nomad lately because of work, I did end up buying the hotspot capability of my vehicle, and there are no regrets. That was probably one of the best decisions I made. Just not having to turn on my phone hotspot and hope I have internet, but just because the van has better antennas. That's pretty great. But anyway, I just thought of that because you said that. So I thought there were some funny messages in the chat. This is a while ago. Co2610 says that he's using a mix of apple and mint with cinnamon, and to me that sounds delicious. So, anyway, I know that's not what was meant, but there we are. And then Steve's very own. He said that he has switched to. I mean, I know he's just trolling, and only partially, but he says he switched to Windows. So I guess good for him. Where is that?
Steve's very own switched to Windows.
Yep. He used to have a Linux coffee clash, and now it's just a coffee clash, or doesn't even call it that. Yeah, it says I'm using Windows again. There we go. It's whatever you want to use. I just use it, makes me happy. So Dale, how about you? What has your distribution, your daily driver distribution changed since the beginning of the year to now?
No, I've been using OpenSUSE Tumbleweed for.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm about a month away from using it for 3 years now.
Oh wow! I didn't see. I had no idea.
Yeah.
You don't wear an almost unhealthy obsession on your sleeve like maybe some people like Eric would. So.
Okay, all I can do is say I used to run Arch.
Yeah.
So you've got a new friend, Nate. You've got a new friend on OpenSUSE.
We're OpenSUSE buddies.
Yay.
Yay. No, I know Adam's had some huge successes this year as far as like how the improvements in gaming and whatnot. Has there been any changes as far as like your distribution use choices this year?
I don't know.
Perfect.
This man doesn't want to admit that he's on Windows right now.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to get over the finish line. It doesn't, whatever means necessary. So
Who are we talking to?
it was Adam.
Oh.
Let's say, for example, you're creating.
So what about you, Sean? I know you I think was it Nix you're using, right? We unmuted, but I don't hear you.
He's unmuted in Zoom, but we can't hear him.
Yeah. Sure wish I could.
I've never had audio issues with Zoom, ever.
No.
No one ever has.
No, it's perfect.
Eris, what are you using now?
I'm on Fedora.
Okay.
I was using Fedora, and then my system died.
Oh,
Then I got a framework,
Oh.
and I've been on Fedora ever since.
which one? 16,
The
13?
AMD one,
Oh, which size?
13-inch.
Okay. Do you like it?
Yeah. I think it works better on this laptop, and it's been good so far. Fedora Kitty, just to be specific.
Okay. Are you using the Kino White or are you using just the straight Fedora?
Straight Fedora.
Okay. Yeah. Now, is there anything? I'm just curious now because you brought it up. How long have you had your framework?
I think it's like half a year.
Okay. Is there anything like as far as expectations versus what you got? Does it seem it's in line, or things that maybe are not quite in line?
Pretty much. The only thing I didn't like, and I don't know how much they can fix that, is that you gotta use one of the ports to power the thing. Like you get 4 ports, right? And you're like, that's 4 ports. But then one of the ports has to be dedicated to the powering. So
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that would be an issue. I use a dock station powers it. When I'm sitting, so that's a basically a non-issue.
I think, and Eris, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have one in front of me. But something I'd like to see, and I feel like those little slot-in ports are big enough, is a dual USB-C where one of them can be power and the other one maybe is just like a slightly lower speed. But like, could you fit 2 USB-C ports side by side in one of those things?
Yes,
hmm.
you could.
I feel
There's also different power output to each side. So there's limitations of which adapters you can use if you want to use full power for them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
I forgot exactly how that goes, but yeah, you couldn't. You can use most of the ports, but not all the ports will output the same power.
That makes sense. Okay.
So there are some challenges because the power delivery requires a special controller essentially, and in order to have 2 ports with power, you have to have some sort of a power delivery thing that would manage the power differences between them. So if you're coming in with 20 volts and you plug in something that can only do 5, it's not going to be able to negotiate that down without losing power unless you separate those out. That's what it boils down to. So
Technology.
I do have, because I do use a framework all the time. I'm not going to keep doing that. I'm going to knock it over. I use a framework from day to day, and then I have close to 30 now at the, because I'm an IT manager, so close to 30 now between the 2 different plants. And we've already had to do repair on one of them because somebody broke a screen within a week of having it. I don't know how they did that, but it was a quick fix, and that was pretty handy. So that's kind of cool. But they seem to be pretty well. I think the only complaint that I had one person who didn't like it, but just got her Surface Book instead, and she likes that. So her X1 Carbon died. Anyway, was because it's a higher, I think it's considered a high DPI screen that's on there. Cause it's 1504 by 2256, I think, is the resolution. So it's kind of an oddball 3:2 ratio. But because it's so much higher resolution than everyone else's, 27-inch 1080p screens, they're now complaining that their other screens look terrible. So that's been the only real problem that I've had. And
So
anyway.
has people requested better monitors?
Yes. Now I have to. People are requesting better monitors because of the framework. So I'm not sure how to fix for that because I don't have a budget to just start replacing everybody's monitors that complains. But
You
Well,
can't give people
graphically-
nice things, Nate. That's the lesson. You can't give people nice things.
No.
We'll go into the system and graphically make the frameworks look worse.
I suppose I'm not sure exactly how I would do that.
I
Set
don't
the
either,
resolution to like 1368 by 768 or
Then
something.
no one's gonna want them.
Yeah, that might cause other problems. That's funny.
Unfortunately, I was kidding, but
No, I like it. Jokes are good. So also in 2024, did anyone here go from using X11 to transitioning over to Wayland?
I did that. I've been on Wayland because of Plasma. I think for maybe 7 months. No, maybe like 9 months. I think. It's pretty good. Um, I haven't had a lot of issues, but I don't do a lot of streaming or other things that would be against me using Wayland full time.
Anybody here make that jump?
So
to-
Pop OS comes with X by default, and they're actually still on 2204 as the base, but you can very simply they already have like Wayland stuff in the repository and everything, so you can just transition over. It's like a really simple, like you change like a config file and then you just log out and log back in, select the Wayland session. So yeah, I've been running Wayland on Pop. I figured that out probably 6 months ago, something like that.
And I don't know how long ago Plasma 6 has come out. We're already in like 6.2. Plasma 5 existed when I was full time, so I'm like so far behind, but it really, and I know progress happens fast, but it feels like so much has changed on the Wayland front with Plasma specifically. Um, like it is almost indistinguishable in regards to like the reliability. Actually, I'd say it's even a little bit better for me. But the speed, the responsiveness, like everything is so predictable on Wayland. Closing it, opening it, like no weird glitches, issues, things like that that sometimes I would have on Plasma Wayland sessions. And I think that has really kind of like made me believe in Wayland more. You know, I've evangelized it a bit in the past when it was not ready, but it is remarkable.
Yeah, I've been Wayland now full time for about a year and a half now, I think. And that was due to the framework, because the fractional scaling, like if I have screens of different pixel density, you can't, just won't do it. You can't do different scaling per screen. So Wayland handles that very well. Plasma 5 handled it pretty well. Plasma 6 is near flawless. There is one issue that I have if I have, like my framework is, I have it scaled to 125%. Then I have other screens. I have to scale those to 105%. Otherwise, I have strange icon issues on Plasma. So like with basically one application, and that is LibreOffice. If I have, it basically scales up on the 100% on the screens that are at 100%, just the icons to 125% and nothing else. And I've gone all kinds of things. I've researched it. I've changed all sorts of things. Unable to fix it. But if I scale those to 105%, problem goes away. So it's something with LibreOffice. That's the only application that does it. So that forced me to make either 125 and 105% scaling.
That being such an odd percentage, do you notice any kind of like performance oddities with having it like that, or is it solid?
If there are, I don't know. I guess.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, so I couldn't tell you. It's nothing I've experienced, but there could be. It's just doesn't affect with the performance of the machine. Doesn't have a degradation on performance, I guess.
That's a good sign. I mean, in my book, because I remember when it like would be very noticeable, like just even moving windows around. So they've obviously put a lot of work in. Used to only like if you did anything other than like 50, 75, 200, it was rough. So that's awesome.
Yeah. But anyway. And so there's anything here in the chat. So Cody, he says Wayland full time since Plasma 6. And Henry Helliwell, I suppose. He says, I was compiling the Linux kernel for almost 9 hours 2 years ago. So it took 9 hours or it finished after 2 years. I don't know which. Reading is fundamental. So, yeah,
Wayland supports HDR now in Plasma.
yeah. I don't know exactly what that means and how that varies.
Who in here does? Of all the people in here, who knows what HDR is?
I know what it
No.
means, but I don't know what it means.
I can pretend I know what it means and kind of like work my way through it.
I've used it. I mean, I understand what it does to like the
I haven't the first clue.
So
Okay.
high dynamic range, I understand what it means, but I don't know what it means. Like, it's English, and the words make sense to me in English, but the meaning of those words strung together, concatenated, doesn't.
Yeah,
mean
it's got
anything to me.
something to do with color, right? The blacked up white, so to speak. I would think, but that's a guess.
It's a mix of things, yeah.
Well, of all the things that it does, it supports HDR.
Okay.
I would say the biggest way to visualize this, I mean, I'm sure some of y'all have opened up a photo or like scrolled on Instagram if you use that and seen like your screen get a million times brighter and blind yourself with it. But a really cool way of visualizing how it can be used in media, and this applies to anything you see on your screen. When you have a photo, every pixel basically has a color, right? You have a color space that can define what colors they are, but basically this is this red, this is this type of blue, this is this type of yellow, whatever it is, right? HDR is really cool because it has like this thing called tone mapping. Pixels can not only be they not only assigned a color, like a specific color value, and typically HDR images are either 10-bit, 10, 12, or 14-bit or higher. Usually 10 is the most common instead of 8-bit. They can also be assigned brightness values. And if any of you have ever like used film slides and looked at it through the light, it almost looks like you're looking at it in person because it's not just color you're seeing, it's actual light coming through. Your computer can basically read the file, and in those areas where like, hey, like this is like a light blue color, but the brightness is also at like 80% higher than the surrounding areas. The display itself through all of the pipelines and whatever will actually show specific brightnesses in those areas, not just colors, which is a fancy just way of saying that it can get really bright and really dark at the same time.
So I guess it says it has to be a 1080p screen or better, but it almost seems like you'd have to have something more like an OLED screen or CRT to benefit from those sorts of additional brightnesses. Because with a regular flat panel, unless you have like zone lighting or whatever, it seems like you wouldn't really get that as much. You know what I'm saying? Or have I lost my mind?
Yeah,
Sean,
you can
got your
get
audio
really.
working?
Oh, is it working?
I don't know. Is it?
Yes, it's working. Yay!
Awesome! Yay! So, if I recall correctly, and this has gone back a few years, HDR started to come around, and they were pushing it within desktop publishing as the next standard. And this is like pre-2000s. And that never really worked because it's a difference between transmissive and reflective light. So going to your example of looking at a slide, that's where you get the transmissive light coming through. And in print it just fell flat on its face. It's just like you can't do it.
So it has to be special technology, right?
To get the best results, so like there's different standards of HDR because we love having a million standards. But having a screen that can get not just really bright, but really dark. So where you mentioned OLED is a really big point for that. You can also get decent like mini LED HDR displays. typically, like most high quality HDR displays are capable of like 1,000+ nits of like HDR brightness. Typically that's peak, not like the full screen being that bright. But transmissive versus reflective. Sorry, I just had a piece of spicy food. Transmissive versus reflective is probably the best way of imagining this. All of the brightness is kind of like almost coming from the source, right? When you're looking at just like a picture on like a piece of paper, all of the light from the image is just like what's bounced off. Like there's no data in the image about like the environment itself and how bright it should be, but HDR does all of those things. It's basically defining the environment that the image should present, rather than like your display just being like, here is like flat image in this color space. The image is like, hey, this is what this actually looks like. And if you have the technology to do it, you know, your display will crank up to like 800 nits in one, you know, little area of pixels, and then be at like 200 nits in like right next to it, and it should look really cool. It's like taking a picture looking through a brightly lit window, and it actually looking like there's light shining in those areas. It's when you experience good HDR, it's awesome, but bad HDR is just everywhere. So it's really underwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, I've had some bad experiences with it. It makes it can make it very difficult to see, especially since a lot of movies now, especially like dark scenes, are very dark. And if you don't have, I guess, a display that's able to, you know, recreate the signals that's, you know, that's coming through as an HDR, and get it bright enough in one area. I mean, even if you turn your brightness all the way up, it's just, I've found that unless I'm like in a dark room, it can be very difficult to like see what the hell's going on. Some movies are worse than others, or some programs are worse than others, depending on like how dark a scene is. But yeah, it's very dependent, I think, on the hardware, you know, you're watching it on.
So now you have all these movies that are really dark, and then you have all this dialogue that's very muddled. Like there's a lot
Yep.
of other sound effects. You can barely even hear anything. So you gotta turn on the captions too, so figure out what
Yep.
they're actually saying.
Yep.
I know when I play Minecraft with my kids, I turn the brightness up all the way so I can see when it's dark.
I do the same thing.
So I don't know if Minecraft supports HDR or not.
Good question. I think there's probably, with shaders, I think it can be done, but by default, it has no idea that HDR exists. They're still in 2012.
Yeah, which is why I like the game. Yeah, I think when Eris was saying about the movies that are really dark, it made me think of when I tried watching Game of Thrones. You know, that there's some of the battles where you may as well just like walked away and just listened to it.
You know, it's funny you mention that, because that is absolutely one of the ones I remember being just terrible. Didn't they have some kind of fight like in that tunnel at the wall or something? I can't remember what specific it was, but yeah, it was so dark that you could see like little wherever the light was specifically, you could see like a little circle of action. Yeah, it's very frustrating.
So,
and there was no way to disable it on the device I was using, so it's just like, forget it.
I was thinking the reason it was so dark is they actually ran out of special effects money, because they blew it all throughout the rest of the series, and so they just made it really dark and just paid the Foley artists to do just a little bit more. That's kind of what I'm going with.
You say
Like
that, and I actually saw that as a joke on something I watched, where they're
really?
Due to budget constraints, we're just going to make this so dark you can't even see what's going on.
It's like the American Godzilla movie, you know. They shot Godzilla, and you can barely see his foot, and then they move away, like you don't see him. That's how you save a lot of money that way.
Yeah. And that's how they did Transformers 2 in 2007. They were so zoomed in on the action scenes that you just couldn't see, you know, the giant robots doing whatever it is that they did. You know,
The scene in I want to say Dark of the Moon, the one with the big snake robot that takes the building down, the skyscraper, one of the more recent ones.
Yeah, that was I
Um,
think it was Dark of the Moon. I think you're right. Yeah.
I think they said that like it took like 40 days or something like that to render or something. There's some like really insane amount of time that it took to render just that scene because the robot has like some like like few 100,000 individual like parts that had to like be calculated and like it's just they were like this is the budget and everything else is not the focus.
Do people like that about the Michael Bay robots? How they have all these moving parts and everything has to be like correspond to the actual car. Like I didn't care for that. I didn't need all that. I mean,
I loved it so much, but like
I liked it.
yeah, it was wild. I haven't seen any other movies like it, so it got me.
I watched his first Transformers movie in the theater, and it made my head hurt trying to keep track of every little stupid moving part. Yeah, it was just too much. And then within the action, when you had multiple Transformers fighting, and it was like the camera's moving, they're moving, all the parts. It was just, I mean, my mind was just like, okay, this is too much.
So
Honestly,
I bought a lot of the I don't want to call them toys, but toys.
the original toys, or you being the new ones?
Collectible items.
Okay, so specifically like the 2009 Optimus Prime, and it took me probably an hour to transform it because of how it emulated very much like how the Optimus Prime transformed in the Michael Bay movies, and so it was very intricate. Now I will say I really enjoy the overall like aesthetics of it because I feel like it's more like if these are some sort of like a cybernetic organism, it felt more like they're cybernetic organisms, not robots that transform, I guess. If that makes any sense. So I kind of like that view of it. Also, I sort of like, I loved Transformers as a child in the 80s until they killed Optimus Prime. Then I didn't like it anymore. And so...
Spoilers.
It was 1986. So if you haven't seen it in 1986, I mean, you've had plenty of time, all right? Unless you're 6. So, anyway, that said, Steve's very own says, Nate, it's an action figure. There we go. Thank you. But it's more than an action figure because it's a like a 3D puzzle as well. Because you have to figure out how to transform the thing. But
I wanted to
anyway,
quickly correct myself. I fact checked myself here. It was 40 hours per frame.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, ouch.
So I kind of like the overall aesthetic, I guess, of it.
I have one of those, and it's
Bumblebee.
one of my favorite things ever. I got it when I was like, I don't know, like 14 or something like that, but I love it so much. It's like one of my favorite items.
Nate, it's funny you mentioned it taking you an hour. I very vividly remember one of my cousins getting a Transformer when I was probably 20 or early 20s and picking it up confidently thinking I was going to be able to transform it and then like not being able to. And that was how I knew I was old. I was like, I'm past that line where I can just, pick something up and play with it. I swear to God, every kid, no matter what it is, can just pick it up and do with it. No, no instructions, no nothing, So I look back on that day and hang my head.
Eric, there are reasons that we have hammers as adults.
I'll transform it.
It just has to be transformed. It doesn't say what it has to be transformed into, right?
That's right. And it won't be transformed back, but it will be transformed. Yeah.
Yeah, some super glue. It'll be fine. So, Eris, you showed that self-transforming Prime. Is this the one that also talks and like dances and everything else too?
You
there's an
issue him
Optimus-
commands through the voice.
Yeah.
This would have been like blew your mind back in like the 80s when the show came out.
Oh yeah.
The robot like works by itself and it transforms by itself and like.
Yeah. The there's a Megatron one as well, and I really like that version of Megatron that they chose to use for that because it's a tank, not a gun. Because the gun I thought was dumb. So anytime someone says the new Transformers are dumb, I'm like, well, I mean, they've always been dumb. So, but I like them. I mean, obviously.
They lost me when they started doing the dinosaurs and I don't know. When it moved to like all of that other stuff, I was like, okay, yeah. I was getting older too, so it wasn't as compelling. I think if I had been a couple years younger, I would have gotten on board. But yeah,
I think the quintessons, what are those like 4-headed things? I'm like, all right, now you're just. I mean, as an adult, I would say, you know, obviously they're doing too many illicit drugs, but I would know that as a child. So I kind of felt like they just went off like this strange path.
yeah.
They were just adding more cores. That's all.
Yeah, they just slam more, like putting NPUs in it and everything else too, I guess.
You're telling me Merlin the Wizard knew the Decepticons? What?
Yes.
He may have had a hand in creating them, but we'll never know.
So on the topic of the HDR thing, I know Vince got a new OLED TV.
Oh,
That man has good experience with good HDR.
so
Oh,
he's got
sorry.
and
Yes.
money. How's that?
Sorry, I'm late to the discussion because I was busy filling my face hole with food.
That's fine.
But I'm back now. So yeah, I recently had the experience of having to replace my 15-year-old Samsung TV, which died.
They do
and
that after
I
some time.
decided, 15 years was a good run.
Yeah, I think so.
Was that a plasma?
Yeah.
No, it was an LCD, and a very expensive LCD at the time. I would have to say, but so I decided to go with OLED this time because HDR is the thing, and it has blown my mind. To say that it has been a life-changing experience is almost an understatement because so more specifically, I got the LG C4, which is it's the mid-range one, right? But it's so beautiful. It is so nice. So a lot of the stuff that was said is correct. Like there's a lot of brightness information in HDR signals and stuff. But I think a lot of the times what's missed also is the color space information that's also there. So it's not quite the same comparison, but like think about going from like your 256 color to like 16-bit color, right? There's a massive amount of information that's included in that image, and now like with HDR, there's just so much more in that color palette that brings everything more true to life. And so when I first got the TV, I can't even begin. We've had it for about a month now, and for that first week, I can't even begin to tell you how many HDR demo videos I just binged. It's just like nature videos and videos of fireworks and whatnot. But oh my God. And then there's one in particular that really blew my mind, which was a hummingbird that's just flying around in a dark space. And the way that bird just pops out of the screen is just, it's something to experience. And if you have a chance to go to a store and look at an OLED screen, it's not the best environment because it's going to be like really brightly lit, the environment, but you can still get a sense of what kind of realism you get from an HDR image. And I feel that that's just something that is if you can get into it, it's great. There's good and bad implementations of HDR, and I think that's where it gets its poor reputation, especially when you try and do HDR on an LCD, where you can't really dim proper areas properly. So to get that contrast, it's about contrast. That's what it's also about. And so I encourage people to go and have a look to get a good understanding of what it is.
Is HDR kind of like how they'll have to upscale something to Blu-ray? Is there like a process where you actually have to go back and then add that extra data in somehow, or how does that work?
So you can, and think people like NVIDIA have like something called Auto HDR where they can sort of almost inject HDR information into an SDR video. So you can do that, but something that's been mastered in
something
HDR
like
is
like if you're getting
different.
it from like a studio or something, like where that, I guess it's just a separate.
It would need to be mastered in HDR to get the full experience.
Generally, you're going to find that on a 4K Blu-ray.
Is there HD content, HDR content on like streaming services?
Yeah.
Just YouTube. Heck yeah.
Oh, okay.
Most and the film industry, I mean, they have all of this stuff a little bit ahead of any time it's ever consumer ready, but like most films are like HDR or HDRable, like going back like a couple decades now.
Oh, okay.
And typically anything actually filmed on like real film can be easily mastered in HDR just because you have the physical rolls and you can mess around with light and stuff. But if you wanted to like let's say play with it yourself, like if you just took like a normal photo that you took that doesn't have HDR, if you throw it into something like Photoshop, you can actually convert it to another color space and like manually add and adjust HDR data. It's really hard, but you can do it.
Gotcha.
Actually, there's an easy way of maybe looking at HDR. Actually, if a lot of you have either Samsung phones or just a recent phone that might have an AMOLED screen or something like that, pull up a YouTube HDR video, and whilst it's a small screen, you still can get a good sense of that contrast. You try it.
Yeah, my Samsung, I have the Galaxy Tab 8 Plus, like I forget how big it is, but that has HDR on it. It can go bright enough to actually have a really solid. But there's still things, and maybe this is just my eyesight, but even on that screen, which gets pretty bright, and I would think would have enough contrast, there are definitely things that are harder to see. But again, this just like Eric said, I mean, it could just be like audio where they're mixing it too dark at least from my eyes. So, but anyway, yeah, I have definitely seen on those OLED, and even on like you're saying, on a smaller screen, you can see it, and not even just for video necessarily, like just because OLED itself can be black as black. Yeah, I feel like that makes things sharper, and so now I'm gonna have to like find out. I guess all the stuff I've been watching is HDR if it's just sort of on YouTube as well. So I don't know.
I think going back to the original point of Plasma supporting HDR, that's actually a huge thing to bring Linux into more a mainstream situation something that people actually care about going forward. It needed to have it. The longer it stayed without it, they're just going to get further and further behind.
Vince, and you may have already done this, but I don't know if do you have an iPhone or do you have
I've
an
got a
Android
Pixel.
or a
Pixel
Pixel?
8.
Okay, so you have like
Yeah.
Ultra HDR and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
right? Have you have you loaded up some of the videos or like photos of like family or whatever on your OLED screen yet to see like the full like HDR like
No, but thank you for giving me that idea.
I
I
did that
will.
with some like photos of like my dogs and cats and family when we got ours, and it was like it was an emotional experience for me, and I was like this is just incredible.
I've
I
got the
highly
perfect photo
recommend
as
it.
well because
Yes.
the other day I was out and I was looking at some Christmas trees outside, just in the city area that we have. And I was just joking around because I was like, oh, look at all the ray tracing, real life ray tracing. But that's probably going to be a perfect photo I'm going to
That
load
would
up
be
because it
great.
had a bunch of light information in there.
Yeah,
The main reason I was excited about HDR and Plasma was that it enabled HDR gaming, but that's only through GameScope because of a whole convoluted thing with Wine and Wayland and whatnot. But if you can get your game running through GameScope with a mile-long launch options thing you throw into Steam, you can get HDR in gaming.
well, it's
But I'm
something.
the only one here who plays games, so fine.
I play games, Adam.
Eric does. Eric's like really good, but he just doesn't want to admit it.
I was playing
I used to be.
Warcraft 2 from 1999. I don't know if that has HDR support or not. I can look into it.
It
Warcraft
can.
2 was the best Warcraft.
So like Vince mentioned, like NVIDIA has technology that allows you to inject HDR. Yeah, you can inject HDR into Warcraft 2.
I think that'd be great if I could do that.
You mentioned this. I
Space
forget when you-
Invaders
Ooh.
I forget when you said it,
in
Adam,
HDR. Yeah.
that you weren't playing Twitch games anymore. And that's last time I tried to play a shooter, I was like, okay, I'm too old for this. I was just getting killed. Like, I didn't even know where I was getting shot from. Like, okay, this is over. The dream is gone. Oh, well.
All right. So I
just did a,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so I looked up converting a JPEG to HDR, and there are converters online, which, I mean, they're probably just stealing your images, but I just tried one, and I uploaded the source file was just like a couple megabytes, and the the HDR file is like 28 megabytes. So
It's probably just a badly optimized site, to be honest.
and
That's
I don't
pretty
even know
bad.
I don't even know what the HDR format is. So I don't know. I just thought I would look for something like that while
That's-
you were talking. But
Yeah, I reckon what they probably do is try to and AI would actually be a remarkably good tool for things like this. Um, if you can have something that is contextually aware of how an image should look, automatically converting it to like a color space and having brightness and things like that, and then like shipping that in HDR would very much be a lot easier. So there we go. Look, a good use for AI.
Until AI can bring me coffee in the morning, I'm not going to call it AI. It's too dumb.
Personally, I would love to have a
Wear
little
what you wish for.
R2D2 running around doing things around the house. I mean, I think. Maybe not with the flight capability. I don't know if I'd want that. Maybe I do want that, actually.
Maybe the original where he didn't fly.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. That'd probably be best. Oh, there's something I was going to say. Obviously, it wasn't important.
It was overshadowed by coffee.
It was. I got lost. He lost me at coffee. Coffee's one of my favorites. So,
what's happening next week, Nate?
well, next week we're off, and the week after that we're off. So hopefully I get those projects that should have been done in October might be done. Probably not. So we'll be back on the 11th of January 2025. So a couple weeks to maybe hopefully improve some of the tooling here. I have some thoughts. I'm running Wayland full time for streaming. I haven't had any problems. So it's also Plasma. So hopefully, hopefully things continue to get better. There was some issues with flickering at first in Wayland and Plasma on 6, but it seems like that's all kind of smoothed itself out. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but that doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. So I don't know. And then let's see. I was going to ask.
What's gonna be the show for when we come back? Is this gonna be the New Year celebration?
It'll be New Year. So like last year, or beginning of this year rather, probably do like, what are some of our personal goals, some things maybe we'd like to learn or conquer, or how we can better improve ourselves, basically either in tech by learning or maybe sharpening some skills and whatnot. Also, if you have any goals, I like the whole New Year's resolution thing. Actually, I do like monthly resolutions. This month I'm going to do whatever. Not really resolutions, but like ambitions every month or even every week. And so sometimes like for a year, I like to plan out my projects and whatnot. Although I did learn recently that one shouldn't create goals that are too lofty, that's actually bad for you psychologically, because then you look at yourself as constantly failing. But you need to aim lower, which is, maybe that's not the right way of putting it, but aim attainable so that you actually accomplish the goals you want to accomplish. And this way you have a better personal outlook.
Lowered expectations. Remember?
Yeah.
The Mad TV. Lowered expectations.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say now. It was about gaming and knowing you're too old. All right. So I like to play games with my kids, and so when we play games like on the Switch or whatever, there are like the new Super Mario Wonder. Has anyone played this? It's actually a 2D platformer on the Switch. It's probably my favorite. Probably my
Great
favorite
game.
Mario game, 2D, Mario game. It's a lot of fun. It really is. And you can be Yoshi, and that's fun for me. I like being Yoshi's my favorite. Anyway, so playing that game with my kids, not to brag here, but I'm kind of the boss, like I'm good. I like 2D platforming, even wall jumping. That's a newer, gaming mechanic and all these other things. I'm pretty good at that, and so we do well. This week we started playing Mario 3D or Super Mario 3D Wonder, not 3D Wonder, but something 3D. And it's very different mechanics. Yes, kind of like Yoshi. They're very nicely played. Shickle. Yeah, that is kind of funny, isn't it? So anyway, I'm terrible at like a 3D platforming. Like my kids were just trouncing all over me, and I was not the boss. I was very much the plebe. Anyway, I just 'cause I didn't grow up with that dynamic, that play mechanic, but like this wall jumping and then diving and all this other stuff, all these other things that you can do, and this, I'm having a hard time with it because to me it doesn't even make sense. Like you can't do that in real life. I guess you can't do lots of things in Mario in real life. But anyway, that aside, it just seems like a bit of a stretch. So that's just something I was thinking about when Eric brought up the Twitch games not being able to play like you once were able to. So, yeah. Anyway, that said, is anybody here excited about any games that have come out?
That have come out or are coming out?
Sure.
Well, Astrobot was pretty awesome on the PlayStation Quintuple. That was an amazing game. Game of the year at the Game Awards, by the way. Good stuff.
Did what kind of game? I don't know anything about it.
It's a 3D platformer.
Oh, okay. Oh, well.
The kids might enjoy it, actually. Seriously.
All right, let me look that up.
A pretty neat game.
What's it
You
called?
do have
Astro?
a PS5, right?
I do. What is it called?
Yeah.
What is it called?
Astrobot?
Do you have a PS5 thing? It's an exclusive.
It is a PlayStation game, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Most of the year's been kind of booty on releases, to be honest. Flight Sim 2024 is pretty awesome.
Ooh, Astrobot actually looks really cute. I like. Oh, yeah.
Balatro, yeah. Balatro's really cool.
It kind of has that Wall-E feel to it. Like Eva. It does look like fun.
Stephen Anderson in chat earlier mentioned the Indiana Jones game, and that looks really awesome.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Is it a Lego Indiana Jones?
Yeah, it's pretty. No, it's like a Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's like it's actual Indiana Jones game. And Troy Baker does the voice of Indiana Jones, and like, man, it's really good. It's a real close Harrison Ford.
Oh, it's on Steam.
Yeah, it's developed by Machine Games. They're a kind of a side studio to id Software. So under the Bethesda Xbox Game Studios.
Wait, do you mean ID software?
Oh no.
And so it continues.
I played.
Consider them rustled.
I play those on Debane.
On Debane.
I play my ID software on Debane.
Old Quack 3.
That's funny. All right. Yeah, let's finish up the housekeeping. So just gonna move into that. So yeah, so next week we're down. Next 2 weeks we're not gonna have a Linux Saloon. I guess it'll mess up the algorithms, but I don't care. Not like this is something that gets a lot that it would matter. But if you have any suggestions, like distributions that we should try out, or if you have any discussion suggestions, application, whatever you might have in your noggin, please feel free to contact me, tag me, or Eris, or anybody. Linux Saloon. Or you can send suggestions at linuxsaloon.com if you have any of that. Anyway, so but yeah, next when we come back, we're going to talk. Be another open mic night format. We're going to just talk about new year, new tech. What are we excited about coming up, and talk about that. And so I guess before Ben falls asleep, if he hasn't already, he said he had an update for us on StormOS, that there's something going on, something exciting.
Yes, there is, my friend.
Something brewing.
new.
Something big, actually. And this is probably the XFCE update that many of us, and I do mean many of us, have been, I hope, anxiously waiting for this one. So, for those of you that I guess haven't been in the loop recently, I want to say 6 days ago on the 15th, I guess 6 days ago, I don't know. My math is god awful. Excuse me. XFCE 4.20, which, thank the ever-loving God, came out with Wayland support. And I'm going to preface this, guys. This is early. I want to say alpha Wayland support. So and that's on the XFCE devs, guys. So don't blame this on StormOS, not blame this on me or the team. That's just not a thing I can control, because, yeah. So if you do try the Wayland session with this version of StormOS, I cannot vouch that it'll work. So just want to make that clear. There is I will not support you. If you do try the Wayland session, that's on you guys. Just pointing that out there. So, I have not confirmed that it works. I can't because I'm on all NVIDIA. So, blah. That's, want to make that clear. You're free to test it, but just don't expect any support on that right now. I don't know if it works. So.
Well, that's exciting. So you said, though, what I thought was
Interesting
that you didn't share was you're actually compiling things right now for StormOS.
Yes, the ISO is actually built, Nate, and it's uploading to Google Drive. Or actually, it just finished, and I will be distributing that soon to the team for proper testing and making sure everything's hunky-dory. Now, the reason I went ahead and added the Wayland thing in there was because I have a touchscreen laptop with a Dell that actually has a 4K screen on here, and I'm genuinely curious to see if the scaling is any better, because I booted up XFCE 4.18 on it, and oh my lord, the display on it was just unreadable. So I don't know if they've improved that or not, but we'll just see what happens. Now, I am running the 4.20 release on Gen 2 on my main machine, and it's good under X11, but I have not been able to log into the Wayland version. So, okay, and then JL says, KDE scaling on Wayland is good with some distros he's tried. Well, I have the same experience and that sort of thing. Oh, Ron wants the G Drive link. Okay, Ron, give me just a moment, bud. I will link that in the chat. And then for those that want to test it in Telegram, that will be coming very soon too. Just a moment. All right, Ron, there you go, buddy. But either way, we'll... Oh, and another thing I want to bring up, this version, I've switched away from KWin to Compiz because the Compiz has a has better XFCE integration versus KWin. Now, for those of you that don't want CompBiz, there is an alias in the terminal called uninstall. You just do that, and then the name of the package I'll put in here, and I'll also put it in Telegram. It's CompBiz easy patch. So if you want to remove it, just run uninstall space that package name, and then it's gone. So either way, that's an update on the Arch version. Now, there is
Hey, Ben.
one last bit I
Ben.
want to go ahead.
If you want to give the link to your Google
saw.
Drive, you need to give it to put it on Zoom, and I'll copy and paste it because
Yeah, let me
YouTube blocks
let
it
me
by
grab
default.
that real quick. Hold on. But yeah, there's one other thing I want to point out, and that is there is a soon coming. It's in build progress right now. It's a Gen 2 edition, and that's like I said, soon to come. Still XFCE, Calamares, etc. But the Gen 2 version will be coming soon, and either way, that's just a little update I wanted to give tonight, and hope everybody has a nice holiday, and we'll see you for more updates in the new year, guys.
Well, thank you very much. I hope the continued success and excitement in all that is
Yes.
StormOS.
Yes, and hopefully in the new year, we'll be looking at the Gen 2 version some point.
Fantastic.
Right.
All right. Well, it is that time to wrap it up for the last time this year. I know people always do that. It's such a
Oh,
trope.
and one other thing, the
Columbo.
CompBiz edition will have the wobbly windows to answer Sean. Yes.
That's good. I always like to run wobbly windows.
Well, you guys will get that and the beloved cube in this version of StormOS, amongst other fancy effects.
Cube is fun.
Right.
It
Oh,
always-
Sean, you got that hand raised.
Go ahead.
Hey, so
Yes.
hopefully my audio is still coming
It
through.
is. Yep.
It's
Beautiful.
coming
Okay,
through
cool.
crystal clear, dude.
Okay, so just wanted to mention that I've been working on a flat pack for Orca Slicer.
Oh,
Okay.
sweet.
Yeah, that was me. In case it was not obvious. And it's working on the development branch. Haven't quite gotten it to compile on the current stable branch of Orca Slicer, but
Okay.
for those who have been waiting for like an Orca Slicer flat pack, I got something.
That's awesome. Well, when this happens, you got to make a big pin announcement in the Telegram or send me an email.
Well, I mean,
write in all caps.
It has happened. I actually hit you on Discord. You probably don't pay much attention to Discord, so
I try to.
yeah. But
That is-
yeah, it's I have a separate repo kind of stood up and a flat pack of some sort running. It prints things. There are a few issues, but it's what it is right now.
Got it. I just checked Discord.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, who else would you think was dropping flat packs of Orca Slicer?
All right.
Oh, that's really cool.
All right, Nate. It was fun tonight. I'll see you guys soon.
All right. See ya in the funny pages.
You guys.
Dale, Eric, I don't know if you have anything you want to share, like stuff you're working on or whatnot.
No, not really. I'm just I think everything sort of slows down this time of year, so everybody's just gonna take time off for the holiday. So,
Sweet.
me included.
Shikla, do you have anything you wanted to share here during our last call?
Yeah, just give some love to some software devs out there putting things together. It's easy to be frustrated when things don't work. I'm guilty of doing that a lot, but boy, I just the fact that we have literally hundreds of options to choose from and like so many different things, and it's usually just like some guy sitting down in front of his computer, and we're all just kind of relying on that. So yeah, just go give a thumbs up to somebody who's doing some good stuff that you benefit from.
I agree. Oh, Jen, do you have anything you want to share? Like a final thought or whatever for the new year? Before the new year?
Oh man, now you want me to come up with something that sounds intelligent, right?
Well,
Wow.
it just got to string words together. It doesn't have to be intelligent.
Oh, okay, just string random words together.
Well, maybe not totally random.
Well, I don't know. Stay out of trouble, and if you get in trouble, it's just someone's opinion, and they're wrong.
Colin,
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. So, Colin, I know you're in your new house. So this new year, you're going to start it off in a new home as opposed to being what were you, a vagrant for a year or something like that?
Oh, just nomad.
Nomad.
Yeah, I never got to say much about the to elaborate on the way things have gone with Linux this year, but I would have thought there was a sensational on top of the list because, and it depends on what your perspective is on Linux and how it affects you, good and bad, right? I mean, for the things that I do, not much affects me, and I just think Linux is just moving forward and going really well. But if you're more of a technical person, you might be coming across things that, that may be a problem and an issue. But I think they're doing really well. I think they've improved heaps. I think it's got to the point where I think anyone could just jump on a Zorin or a Linux Mint 22 and just use it. I've got family members that I've put on this year on Linux Mint, and I don't hear from them. They just use their computer. And, that's where we've got to with Linux. I mean, go back 5-6 years ago, you probably, somebody might have been saying, oh, this happened, that happened. I don't hear from them. And it's a lot better than trying to fix any Windows issues. I'm not hating on Windows. It's just that some issues, because I don't use it now anymore, it's sometimes just hard to sort of catch up with what problems are. So that's my perspective on Linux. I think it's done awesome job. I don't use Wayland at the moment because I am on Cinnamon. So Wayland's just not quite there yet with Cinnamon. If I'm on KDE or GNOME, definitely I would be using it because I don't see any flaws much with Wayland on those ones. The one I've noticed with Cinnamon is that sort of got me because sometimes I go on to Wayland and then sometimes I go back. And then one day I was on Thunderbird, I was trying to drag something into a folder and it wasn't working. I'm thinking, what's going on? And then it hit me, it's Wayland. So I'll just, use the menus instead. But I think Linux is doing an awesome job. And I think the developers and everyone who does these things, I think like Schickel said, they do an awesome job, and I think there's got to be a way of getting them paid a bit more, I think, across the board. An incentive for people to pay, where it's just out there a little bit more, where donations are given to these people, because I think they work hard and they don't get a lot for it, I believe. But anyway, having said that, there is one app that I want to bring forward. I don't know if you all remember MP3 Game. I was trying to do some music and balance some music out the other day, and that thing just disappeared off the face of the earth. I don't think it's managed anymore, but I found a command line one. So I'm not normally a command line guy, but geez, it worked pretty simple. It's called RS Game, I think it was. So maybe we have a look at that in the new year.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just found it fairly simple to use. So it's nothing worse than music being louder and softer when you're driving along and, adjusting the volume all the time. That's annoying. But anyway, I think Merry Christmas to all. Have a great New Year and be safe. And we'll see you all in the New Year with probably, hopefully I can get started on making some videos in the New Year. Get this house done, get the backyard finished, get it all complete. And then I've got time to focus on the things I can do with Linux, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know how Santa Claus can land his reindeer and on your roof though, because there's no snow. I don't know how that works.
Look, he has magic powers.
That's true.
He'll work it out.
But that coat's got to get warm though. It's got to be really warm. I guess if it's at night, it's not
He's
so bad.
probably they've
Magic
probably got
seas.
new equipment now.
That's
It just
true. Yeah.
automatically changes into a vest or something as he portals through the API from north to south.
Yeah. So makes that transition. Anyway, well, good deal. Well, thank you very much for being here. And then, Eris, do you have anything you want to share? Now that you have a framework, I'm really interested in knowing how that's all working out for you now. Like, what kind of cool things you can do with that?
Not really. I would say that to the time of giving, hopefully, if you can, do try to give a donation to any software developer or people in open source you think could you enjoy their software, whatever you can.
Totally agree.
Yep.
Find a project that means something and throw them a few bones. Yep. Even a thank you really goes a long way. That means a lot. I know thank you won't put any food on the table, but it can keep them going hopefully to the next one. Keep the motivation there. So someone who can contribute.
I've got one more thing I want to say.
Oh, sure.
I'd just like to thank you, Nate, for providing this platform for us to come on and talk Linux.
No problem.
You do a wonderful job. Yeah, you do a wonderful job, and you allow us to come here and talk about things that we're all passionate about. All right, so thanks for that.
Well, you're very welcome. I selfishly enjoy doing this because I learned something and then I can apply that. You've given me lots of great little tidbits. So has Jinda. Helped me in my professional life. Eric sent me down numerous rabbit holes that have been beneficial, some not. No, just saying, Eric. And of course, Sean with Orca Slicer and Eris has just been a joy just to have helping me out with this and providing a lot of things, a lot of like these Strawpolls, and also sending me down numerous rabbit holes with his aggregation of news and everything else too. So,
and Jinder as well. Jinder's always in the background there, putting links and
angry
especially
IT
when
scanner.
Aris is, especially since Aris hasn't been here for a little while, and Jinder sort of takes that role, and those two guys are sort of doing excellent stuff in the background. So, congrats to you guys too.
Shickle, I appreciate you just being here. It's it warms my my 3 sizes too small heart or whatever, something like that. Was it the Grinch? Something like 2 sizes. It was 2 sizes. I don't know. Anyway,
the Grinch.
You're not a mean one, are you, Mr. Sean?
I'm not telling.
I have a website called cubiclenate.com. I write things when I can. It's been a little bit sporadic lately, but I did release a couple articles this week. One on running a Duolingo flat pack on your system. So if you want to do Duolingo, it's nothing more than it's just a wrapper for the website, but it's super convenient to be able to just stab your MetaKey and type Duolingo and then just have it pop up and then be ready to go. Pretty cool. Also, if anybody remembers Peppermint OS, one of the features it had that was very unique was you could actually do web apps very easily. And then I really been searching for something since then that was really good. And it's actually Cosmic OS related, but there's something called Quick Web Apps. It's a flat pack. It's also available in the repos if you have running a Tumbleweed. But like so I've turned a couple of applications into web apps, a couple websites, I guess, into web apps. And it's a really convenient way to do it. So to manage it. Anyway, you can check that out on cubiclenate.com. I do things sometimes. when I'm not having to do other things. So I want to say Merry Christmas to everybody. This is the only good thing about winter. Otherwise, I think winter sucks. It's just Christmas, the lights, the festiveness, the food, giving and sharing. I really like that about this holiday season. And cookies. Cookies are great. Although I'm doing a lot of gluten-free cookies now because my daughter's gluten-free now. But anyway, Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network, so check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I thank you all for your support, however you do it, being a part of this conversation here in Zoom or on YouTube, or if you watch the show after the fact. I appreciate that too. We think I'm involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back in a personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers. 'Tis the season. And please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Bye. See yous later.
See you in the new year.